Good morning and
morning.
welcome to the GroupM Rooftop at Cannes. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Good morning.
I hope
Thank
you
you for having
both had relatively hassle-free travel getting here.
More or less, no, absolutely, it was fine.
Super smooth.
Okay, excellent. So we'll get right into it. Our topic today for this first content session is about organizational transformation. And I'm really interested to hear both your perspectives on this. I think you both have a tremendous amount of experience in this area, but you also come at it from very different angles, which is what I think the audience would really appreciate. So maybe we'll start with some quick introductions. As you both know, I'm Aruna Natarajan. I am the Chief Client Officer for EssenceMediacom in the US. Jose, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your role, please.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jose Reyes. I'm the Chief Creative Officer for EY in the Americas. I'm a designer by trade. I went to art school and ended up in consulting via, the winding road of life, the way we all end up sometimes in the careers that we have. And I really, I tend to approach everything from a creative perspective. Humans are very interesting because we're emotional creatures. So anytime you get a chance to creatively engage with someone, even in transformational change, I think that's a huge advantage.
Wow, that's amazing. Philipp?
So my name is Philipp. I work for Bayer Consumer Health. I'm responsible for agency relationships and partnerships and so-called non-agency partnerships. So that could be a whole lot of different things. My background is I studied economics, and I always was in that sphere between clients and agencies. So I worked at agency myself. I was in a marketing procurement role before, and now for the last five years, I've worked for our global CMO, really elevating our relationships and build strategic partnerships with the likes of EssenceMediacom, for example.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And as you think about the week ahead at Cannes, I know, Jose, you mentioned this is maybe your 7th or 8th time here. So you are clearly a pro. Is there anything specific that you're looking forward to this week?
Yeah, I'm always very excited to discover something new. You always come with a little bit of a preconception of what I think I'm going to see, and you end up seeing something that you never imagined. I'm always really curious about the patterns and the trends, the things that sort of overtake the moment. Last year was generative AI, the year before was metaverse, the year before was something else. So those are always interesting for me to watch.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is probably the most interesting for me is I'm a big believer in the sort of next generation. And so I get really excited about seeing new creative ideas coming from the next generation that's following us. I feel really positive about that.
I think for me it's interesting this year because it's my third year. We as a company and as a division, the consumer division at Bayer, we have started to engage with the festival 2 years ago for the first time with our CMO being a jury president 2 years ago, and we really learned to understand the value of it for our organization. And now maybe also as a segue into our topic, we are now going through a massive organizational transformation.
Exactly.
So for us, for me especially, it's interesting to see how we can maybe use where the industry is going and find ways how we can, manage this for us and figure out a way how we can embed this in our organizational transformation. Because, as we transform as an organization, our ecosystem around us have to be with us on this journey. So I think that will be an interesting context for us, for all of us, and for my team in Cannes this year.
Fantastic. And I think that is a good segue in, right? So if we're here to talk about organizational transformation and how that can help enable the vision of an organization. To your point, Philipp, I think Bayer has been in the news a lot about a very rapid and extensive organizational transformation that you are all going through, driven from the top. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us a little bit about what is the vision behind that transformation and what does the roadmap look like?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time for us at Bayer because the transformation we are going through is surely maybe the biggest the company has ever done, and the company is 160 years old. So, we are a very old organization. Yeah, we have a new CEO who joined our business last year, Bill Anderson, who is a strong believer of eradicating hierarchies and changing the model and ripping up the old rule book of organizations. And we are now implementing this model called dynamic shared ownership, which basically really means you eradicate hierarchies and you create micro-organizations who manage themselves within the organization and really drive change and drive creativity and drive new thinking within the company. And for a company of our size and our legacy, this is a massive undertaking, obviously. Yeah. It has been done in other organizations before, especially in tech and you know, maybe smaller companies. But for us, with 100,000 people, it means a big change. And you know, the organization, the people really have to embrace it, have to buy into that mindset. And that's the journey we are on. So yeah, everything is in that context.
Fantastic. And Jose, I'd love to get your perspective on this because you sit on the other side of this, right? EY Consulting is the kind of company that would typically be brought in to help clients like Bayer. And you have a very interesting role as Chief Creative Officer at a consultancy. So tell us a little bit about your role and how you work with clients like Bayer.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the transformation you just described is absolutely incredible. The idea of creating transformational change in an organization, I call it community, versus maybe like the way you described it, the microorganisms. Same thing, right? You have these communities of people that you enable, and those communities, but you have to know them really well, and you have to set a very, very clear lighthouse. You have to have a very clear vision for those communities to act on their own, so that they don't go out, they go towards something. So, and I think that generally describes the way that someone like me, in the role that I play at EY, would help some of our clients, is how do we design that vision? How do we tell that story of the direction of travel so that all the communities can then get on board? We do things, you know, it's a lot of community building. It's a lot of people supporting the change that they're part of defining and supporting the change that they're part of understanding. So I think for us, it's important to approach that from that community level and have a very, very clear vision that people can attach themselves to. I think that's super important. Otherwise, you run the risk of having these communities running off in different directions.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, right? Because when you think about any kind of transformation at scale, it comes with a lot of disruption, it comes with a lot of change, which typically causes a fair bit of anxiety among people, right?
Absolutely.
So Jose, how do you tackle that? Can you talk to us a little bit about how you help your own team, but also your clients, think about the human element of it, the anxiety, because you need to take them along on this journey.
You have to. You absolutely have to. We talked recently about this level of anxiety that happens sometimes, right? Yes. When an organization goes through multiple waves of change, you end up creating a culture or a misunderstanding of that change, a fear of that change, right? After you go through 2 or 3 waves of transformation, you start to hear things from the communities like, this is just another change, we'll wait until the next one happens, right? So I think one way to get around that is to involve people in the vision, make sure that they understand it, to train them. I think one of the triggers of fear is, I don't know what this change means for me. I don't know how I'm going to be able to follow you because I don't know if I have the right skills to follow you. So training has a lot to do with it. You know, readying, the readiness of people to adopt and to change. And I think that that's probably the one insight that I've seen over and over again is organizations that struggle with transformation don't spend enough time upskilling the communities of people in all the different ways that they need them to be.
I mean, what I have heard now working on this over the last few months is the differentiator is that you have to buy into the mindset, right? Like if people have the mindset for this change, then you have a good chance that it's working. If people, as you said, think like, it's just another wave, and we have done this 2 years ago, we've done this 5 years ago, and we'll do something. So I think if it's like that, it will be difficult to have the impact. But if people really buy into that mindset and support it, understand the vision, and are willing to go on this journey and put themselves out there, I think then there is a chance. But that's hard, right?
Yeah.
That's hard to do because of course it means different things for different people. In big global organizations, you have cultural differences, nuances. So it's a massive effort, and I'm curious how, for example, you at EY help organizations like us, because it's not an easy task.
Absolutely. And to that point, buying into a vision is also often not a one-time thing, right? Repetition is important, consistency is important. So I'd love your perspectives on that. And maybe, Philipp, you can start by telling us, what are you doing at Bayer with your new CEO, new leadership, new vision, this massive transformation that you are taking up across the world, across so many markets that you operate in? How are you consistently communicating that vision and helping people buy into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it's important to know that we are basically 3 companies in one, right? So we have 3 distinct different divisions. We have a pharmaceutical division, which is classic pharmaceutical business in the RX environment. We have a consumer health division, where I'm part of, which is OTC, over the counter, less regulation, runs more like an FMCG business. And then we have an agricultural business, a crop science business. Which of course is very B2B focused, very decentralized across the world. So our company vision is health for all, hunger for none, which is obviously something I think everybody can buy into, and it's a wonderful vision to corral yourself around. But of course, because these businesses are so different. Now also implementing DSO, or dynamic shared ownership, is different across those divisions. And what we are now, where we now are right now, is that we actually define a new operating model, right? So, for example, in consumer health, we are reshaping our operating model, how we manage our brands, how we manage our business. And then from then on, the organization follows, and the way how we structure ourselves and how our teams are structured will follow suit based on that operating model. And then for me personally, what I have done to worry about how bring I our partners in, right? Because of course, if we change our operating model, if our team structures change, the way how we engage with our agencies, our non-agency partners will also change. We have to adapt our agency models to it, and that's basically now the journey we are on. I have to say it's scary on the one side, but it's also very exciting, right? Because of that level, I don't think it has been done many times before. So be part of it and work with our partners and find ways to optimize the way we work together, get even more impact, is super exciting. But it's an unknown, and we have to manage that internally, but also externally. And as you can imagine, like, our partners are also a bit nervous, right? Like, what does this mean? Like, do we run through another, selection processes or whatever? So we have to manage that very carefully as well.
Absolutely. I've been brushing up on all my acronyms like DSO and VACC.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting there. I've got my list going. Jose, you spoke a little bit about training and the importance of training as you're trying to get people to adapt to change. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit more? What kinds of training have you seen be successful? Is this more skills-based training, behavioral training? I'd love a little more color there.
Yeah, it's probably all of the above. So think about the complexity of something like the transformation that you're going on. Each individual person, we spoke about this the other day a little bit, I call it like creative intimacy. You almost have to get to the point where you are changing on a one-on-one basis. And even though it's not scalable at that, describing it that way, one-to-one, you have to get to the point where each individual person understands how they fit into the vision and what they're contributing to that vision. And so for for that individual, and now if you pull out and you look at it at a community basis, right? We have a community or a capability of people that are going to do something for this vision, to enable this vision. Are they trained well enough to accomplish that vision with what they have today? And you start looking at all your different communities and you start understanding, well, we have an incredible community of people that were skilled at what got us here, but for us to transform from where we are today to the unknown, we need those people to have a different set of skills. And some of them are behavioral, right? Adaptability, flexibility, training on new technologies, the ability for someone to understand how they fit into the vision is key. It's almost basic psychology. You have a thought, that thought creates a feeling, and that feeling that you have creates an action.
So it's not traditional training in that sense. It's more like getting people. It's again about the mindset, I guess, right? So it's how do you train people to do that? Because that's not just like, okay, transferring a skill or transferring capabilities. It's more like getting the mind ready for it.
That
right?
can actually
absolutely
be more straightforward sometimes if it's skills-based training.
The skills-based is basic.
Exactly.
You have to have it, right?
Like
we're going to train you on a new platform, we're going to train you on a new skill set, but those things have to be basic. You can't expect to transform the organization if the material, the human material with which your organization runs is not trained to do those things. It's very difficult to do that. But bringing people along emotionally, training them to accept change, to be flexible, to be adaptable, those things we tend to forget in the business world because we're checking off all of our KPIs and we forget that the check boxes of the KPIs have to do with human beings who wake up in the morning and they're tired and they're cranky and their kids are screaming in the morning or whatever they're dealing with that day. We have to train our workforces to be much more adaptable at the speed at which our lives are changing. And some of that is, bringing them together as groups, teaching them, hey, here are new technologies, giving them awareness. Awareness for me has a lot to do with it. When someone isn't aware of the change that's coming, the result is fear. The feeling is fear.
Got it.
So a lot of it is awareness. So as a creative person, coming from an advertising background, I would treat it almost like an advertising campaign. I would treat it as a messaging campaign internally, and I would let people know and build awareness. You're building awareness for a change.
That's really interesting. From your perspectives, both of you, is there anybody who does this well? Have you seen companies or organizations or even brands who you think adopt transformation at scale well?
I mean, honestly, I think we as big corporate, I mean, we look at the tech world, obviously. We look at, smaller, younger, more nimble organizations who don't have that, these hierarchical structures, the legacy from being set up in a world which is not the world as it is today. So, but when I even speak to some of these organizations, they struggle with similar things as well now. And, for example, I spoke to a tech company, I won't name them, but they go through the same kind of training we go through, and they were founded 20 years ago, right? And I think this is when, organizations grow and become global. I think certain patterns, certain structures just establish themselves, even in organizations we wouldn't think, that they are. So I think it's just something what big organizations have to manage. And, and keen to hear your point of view, Jose, because I think every organization maybe needs to go through those trainings and those and reiterate themselves and challenge themselves every other year maybe, because otherwise human patterns, human behavior maybe creep in, and so you constantly have to challenge yourself that you stay nimble, stay curious, do all of these things. I think, that's at least what we have experienced.
100%. I think without naming a particular organization, I think if you look across the landscape, and in particular what's happened in the last 3 to 4 years, we went through a universal moment where everyone had to change at the same time.
Yeah, true.
And so I think if you look back and you look at the organizations that were able to pivot very quickly and able to adopt new ways in the last 4 years, you will very clearly see some organizations that were much better at managing their communities than other organizations that really struggled to, maybe they didn't understand at the time what their communities were. And then they had to take a little bit more time to understand what their communities are. I don't think there's an organization that doesn't struggle with this. I think it's anytime you have more than 2 people, it gets complicated, you know? So I think different organizations probably find different ways within their own vision and their own strategy and their own culture. They find different ways to adopt organizational transformation.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're coming up on time. So, Jose, Philipp, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you both enjoy your week at Cannes.
Thank you.
And leave here maybe a little tired, but inspired by whatever you see this week. But really appreciate you joining us first thing on a Monday morning for this. Thank you so much for your perspective.